are listening to the cycling podcast at the Vuelta a España in association with Rapha, the fastest clothing in the world tour, the home of cycling with character. Ride and watch with Rapha in 2019 as they partner EF Education First and Kenyan SRAM. Stage 14. Today we are in Oviedo.
Where are you, Richard?
That's a good question, Lionel. About 20 minutes from Oviedo in Asturias, hometown of Samuel Sanchez. There's a statue of him there. Didn't see it today. That's where the stage finished today. I'm up in the mountains. It's chilly. I'm looking out over the mountains. The sun's just dropping behind them, and I can feel the temperature drop. And it's getting quite cold, but it's very, very remote where I am. I'm in a quite strange hotel. I've lost Daniel for the night.
You've shaken him off?
He's serving a one-night suspension, of course. Well, he's serving a one-night suspension after eating crisps during last night's podcast.
Dear me.
He's been benched for the night, and you've been roped in.
Well, I'm not eating crisps.
I couldn't get into his hotel tonight because when I tried to book it, it offered me a shared dorm of 8. I'm assured by him that he has his own room there, but I didn't really fancy that.
You're up in the region where Simon Gill, the photographer, and I had the most bizarre experience of all time a couple of years ago, where we checked into some kind of haunted house, and there was a bat in my room. And then we dined on extremely gristly goat stew, while the man who owned the place played on a loop various different versions of the song Hallelujah, originally sung by Leonard Cohen, of course, but there were all sorts of versions, a sort of school children's choir version and a sort of Russian X Factor style version.
I hope you got Jeff Buckley in there as well.
Possibly, very possibly. He obviously really likes that song, and the only thing that broke
you reckon?
the only thing that broke the continuous loop of Hallelujah was a video of our host from a few years ago, probably about 20 years ago, wearing a very kind of outdoorsy Indiana Jones style hat in some sort of Spanish version of a sort of Ray Mears survival program. And the weirdest thing was that the hat that he was wearing on the screen, the TV that was behind him, was resting on a glass sort of skull on the mantelpiece. It was an extremely strange evening. Wasn't sure I'd get out of there alive, to be honest. I was worried that might be.
Did you?
That might be it. Well, no, this is a robot version of me. It's been doing a pretty good impression for 2 years, eh?
Yeah. Well, reasonable. I'll tell you who's singing Hallelujah tonight, Lionel. It's Sam Bennett, and I spoke to him at the start this morning. Here's what he said. Have you come through the mountains? How are you feeling?
Pretty okay. I thought it'd be a lot worse, but it's just close to the end of the year. I kind of have enough now, but not too bad.
Fancy it today?
Yeah, looking forward to it. This race doesn't really offer much for sprinters. I can kind of understand why nobody really comes, but like 2 weeks and it's only been 2 to 3 sprint days, so it's not enough. But looking forward to today. Waited long enough.
Good luck. Well, that was Sam Bennett at the start this morning in San Vicente de la Barquera. Absolutely beautiful little village on the coast with a lovely beach. There was a bit of surfing there, just along from Santillana del Mar. Is that what it's called? I think I've said that wrong. I'll look it up. But that's where we stayed on the rest day last year. And anyone who's read or heard my diary from last year, which is available as a Friends special, will know how much I love that place. Santillana del Mar, a beautiful little village just close to the coast here. And well, that's in Cantabria. The start was in Cantabria. We came into Asturias, so we're heading west. And it was a sprinter stage, which is why I went and spoke to Sam Bennett. As ever with the Vuelta, not quite as straightforward as that. There were a couple of lumps, but it did prove to be a sprinter stage. And it was obvious that the sprinters teams were not going to let the opportunity pass. A breakaway did go with a pretty strong breakaway. Sylvain Dillier from AG2R La Mondiale, Luca Pibernek from Barry Merida, Harm Vanhoucke from Lotto-Soudal, who was a very late call-up to the Vuelta in very tragic circumstances. His good friend Bjorg Lambrecht died at the Tour of Poland, and it was Vanhoucke who actually replaced him. Now, we'll hear from Vanhoucke a little bit later on about that and about what it meant to him to be in the break today. Salvatore Puccio was there for Team Ineos, Diego Rubio from Burgos BH, and Stefano Rosetto from Cofidis. Saw a lot of him at the Tour de France in the breakaways, of course, as well. They only got 2:20, a maximum lead of 2 minutes 20, and it was hovering around 2 minutes for a long way. Rosetto eventually sat up, followed by the TV cameraman who lingered on him as he started to take a natural break, which was slightly awkward, and the camera then started pointing at the cameraman's groin, which was not ideal. But anyway, they got back on track, and we could see the teams at the front. It was Deceuninck-Quick Step, Mitchelton Scott, Trek Segafredo as well, actually, and Bora Hansgrohe. I don't know if I missed it, Lionel. You might be watching it more closely, but they seemed to come to the front very late on. They didn't seem to be that involved in the chase. Did I miss that, or is that correct?
No, that's a pretty accurate reading. Yeah, they were absolutely perfectly placed when it mattered. That was the thing. They got Sam Bennett into the ideal position for when the chaos happened.
And the break was caught finally with 4.5 kilometres to go. And then inside the final kilometre was a huge crash, which really just took a lot of riders out, including some sprinters. It was touch of wheels. Willie Smith, the Katusha rider from South Africa, who I'd been hoping to interview on the rest day, actually, he seems to have come off worse. Well, not the worst, actually. Luka Mezkic is out the race entirely, the Michelin Scott sprinter. But Willie Smith has had a lot of stitches in his knee and was wondering tonight whether he can get through tomorrow's stage and finish the Vuelta. Hope he can, because it's his first Grand Tour, and he's a fascinating guy, and he was on the attack a couple of days ago. In the melee with only about 15 riders or so made it through unscathed, and Sam Bennett was obviously one of them. But Tosh van der Sande of Lotto-Soudal attacked hard and got a decent gap. Max Richese from Deceuninck-Quick Step, the lead out man really, but he chased him down. And Bennett latched onto the back of them, and then when he jumped quite early, he got a big gap, and it looked easy for Bennett, but he was very impressive and very powerful, and kind of reminded me of the stage when he took at the Giro a couple of years ago. Was it last year? I think it was last year on the motor racing circuit. Do you remember that stage, Lionel, where he jumped very early? And there are more tools in his box than just pure sprinting, Sam Bennett, and he can get over climbs, and he can do what he did today, which was to sort of jump and catch them unawares quite early on. Yeah,
that's a very good point, because that was exactly the finish that sort of sprung to mind. It wasn't similar, but it was Bennett taking the initiative when he needed to make sure that he didn't allow anyone else to spring a surprise on him. That finish on the motor racing circuit in Imola came after there'd been quite a punchy little climb on the run-in, and he was right to the fore on that climb that day. And then Bora Hansgrohe did a lot of work to keep it together, but because they'd done so much work keeping everything together and bringing in a two-man break, I think it was still up the road, they really had worn themselves out and were unable then to give Bennett a conventional lead out. But instead of sort of hanging around and freelancing and letting other people take up the running, Bennett jumped, and there wasn't a lot of opposition around him today, was there? Richese is obviously quick, but much better known as a lead out man than a finisher. But Bennett didn't take any chances. He went hard. It was slightly uphill, wasn't it? Or more than slightly uphill, I think. It's difficult to tell on the TV, but he was powerful and decisive, and deserved his second stage win. And I think the versatility that he's shown across last year's Giro and this year's Vuelta does show that he isn't just a sprinter. He can win in different circumstances, and you wouldn't bet against him adding another one or maybe two stage wins in this race, would you? The way the course looks for the final week or so.
Absolutely. So Bennett was first, Richese second, Van der Sande held on for third, and Marc Sorot of Groupama FTJ was fourth. No change in GC, obviously. Primož Roglic leads. He was held up a little bit by the crash. Alejandro Valverde is still second. He was caught up in the crash and did have some medical treatment. I saw him on his way to the bus. He didn't look too bashed up to me, but maybe there were wounds that I didn't see. Pogačar as well. I hope I've said that right. I'm getting a bit of a steer on my pronunciation of Pogačar. He is still third overall, also held up in the crash and may have just come down a little bit too. Miguel Angel Lopez, fourth.
The fastest clothing in the World Tour. The home of cycling with character. Ride and watch with Rapha in 2019 as they partner EF Education First and Kenyan SRAM.
Thank you very much indeed to our title sponsor, Rapha. Very grateful to them. They are enabling me, at least at the moment, to be here looking out over this wonderful view in Asturias. And they're helping you to join me next week, Lionel. When are you coming back out? Is it on the rest day?
Yeah, fly out on the rest day, and we'll be joining you in Guadalajara for Wednesday's stage finish, and then seeing it through to Madrid.
Wonderful.
Looking forward to it.
Before we crack on with the stage, I had a message today from Rob Llewellyn, a message on Twitter. Hi, Rich, first-time caller, friend of podcast for 3 years, still waiting for post-cast mention. Well, there you are, Rob. Thanks for being a friend of the podcast. Just wondered if Roglic should be called Camperman in light of Daniel's continued confusion with Pog. That's good. What do you think? We've got Nairoman, Superman, Camperman, given Roglic's camper van that's following him around. That's good. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Why not?
Lionel
why
doesn't.
not?
Sorry,
and then what,
sorry, Rob.
If
Lionel sounds a bit underwhelmed, I do apologise. Thought I'd get a little chuckle for that. Anyway, more important business. On Tuesday, on the rest day, we're going to have our next press conference episode. Please phone in your questions. We've got a few already, but leave a WhatsApp voice memo at +44 7971 338 205. That's +44 7971 338 205. You can I think you can send a voice memo to that, or use the WhatsApp voice memo facility, which Lionel didn't know existed, but I showed him.
I'm a complete idiot, Richard.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
This podcast isn't long enough to list all the things I don't know.
Yeah, no, true.
So let's move on.
Let's do one a night. Okay. A very, very impressive win by Sam Bennett. Clinical, really. I mean, there's only one chance that he's not taken. And that was a little bit of a positioning problem, but the speed is there, the power is there, and he's recovering okay, obviously. He's not that happy that there aren't more opportunities, as we heard a bit earlier on, but he couldn't really do an awful lot more, and his market value must be going up all the time, which is interesting because, as far as we know, his destination for next year isn't decided entirely. There's a bit of a tug-of-war going on, or a tug-of-love, between Bora Hansgrohe, who seem keen to keep him, and Deceuninck-Quick Step.
I tell you what, Rich, Bennett obviously want to get his future sorted, but while he's winning, his value increases. And although we know Patrick Lefevere is, he has his limits, doesn't he? He's very much, he has a pay scale, and he's very reluctant to break it for anyone, really, as we've seen from the riders that have left Deceuninck-Quick Step over the recent years. But Bennett's star is shining ever brighter, and I just wonder, he could be an outsider for the World Championships. You just never know. Maybe he would be wise to hang on another couple of weeks and see what happens there.
Absolutely.
Speculation.
I thought you didn't do speculation, Lionel.
No, I don't. I just feel you left me on my own for so long last week. I had nothing to do with my own brain other than speculate, and I just can't shake it now.
Think about who might win the World Road Race Championship. Well, I went to the Lotto-Soudal bus at the finish because I was keen to speak to Harm Vanhoucke, the youngster there, who, as I said earlier, replaced Bjorg Lambrecht, who very sadly and tragically died after a crash at the Tour of Poland. I did catch up. They were very good friends, and you'll hear in this interview Vanhoucke talk about the circumstances in which he was selected and what he did to just check that Lambrecht's family were okay with him coming to the Vuelta. he's a young rider, did well to get in the break today. And looking through some old results, I found the Tour de Savoie Mont Blanc from 2017. That was won by a certain Egan Bernal, with Lambrecht second and Vanhoucke third. So he was a friend of Lambrecht, but also they were guys who raced together, and obviously were both two kind of exciting young prospects for Lotto-Soudal. So I went to find him at the finish and speak to him about the day's stage, his first Grand Tour, and about his friend Bjorg Lambrecht. Stretching your back out there, that was a long day out there, was it?
Yeah, it was already in the first case we went, but I think we had a good group, but they never give us really much time, so we had to gamble on the second last climb, and then on till then we went full till the finish, and the last 45 k's were really hard.
I mean, your first Grand Tour, to be at the front of the race all day like that must have been a nice feeling.
Yeah, I wanted already to get in a break from the first day, and now finally it happened. So I was really happy to be in it, and then to fight for the victory till 5k or 6k from the end. It was an amazing feeling.
Does thinking of your friend Bjorg Lambrecht provide inspiration, motivation for you?
Yeah, for sure. Normally I didn't have to be here. I ride here in this place, and I want to honor him on the best way I can. And I think today it was a good day and a good chance to do that. So I think you will be happy from above.
And you were called up very late, obviously, sadly, to replace Bjorg. I mean, presumably you hadn't been training specifically for a Grand Tour. How do you adjust to a 3-week race having not prepared for it?
Yeah, I didn't have the really best preparation for it, but I see it as a chance and an opportunity. Too bad that I have to replace him, but it's good for next season, and to learn from it for the future, and I hope to be one day a good GC guy.
When you got the call, offering you this place, did you have any second thoughts about it? Not just because but because of the circumstances were so sad. Did you think twice about it, or was it just something you knew you had to do?
First, asked his parents if they were good with it, if they really wanted it, and they said to me, the only one Bjorg wants to replace him was me, because I was also a really good friend with him. I shared always a room, and it was a really good feeling to hear it from the parents, and I do my best here.
Well, that was Harm Vanhoucke of Lotto-Soudal, another very young rider, just 22, as Bjorg Lambrecht was, and I found it pretty moving the way that he described calling Lambrecht's parents to check they were okay with him riding the Vuelta. It can't have been an easy few weeks at all for him. He was at the Tour of Poland, and then has come to his first Grand Tour without having specifically prepared for it, which is tough for any rider, but never mind a 22-year-old riding his first Grand Tour, so he's acquitting himself well, I think. Yeah,
and Lotto-Soudal, in what must be very difficult circumstances, are racing extremely well, aren't they? Of all the World Tour teams in this race, they probably, I haven't actually checked exactly, but they've been represented in a lot of breaks through the race. Vanhoucke today, we've had Sander Armé up the road very early in the race. Jelle Wallace was up the road one day. Thomas de Gent's been in a break, and of course they've got Carl Fredrik Hagen riding high in the GC. And just thinking back, won't repeat myself from my conversation with Mark Sargent, but just seeing how kind of still shocked by Lambrecht's death he was at the start of the race. Be under no illusion that they are they're racing on in very difficult circumstances.
Well, I think it's time, Lionel, for our diarists, Nick Schultz and James Knox. Wonder what kind of day they had today. James Knox, of course, Deceuninck-Quick Step rider. Nick Schultz of Mitchelton Scott, who lost a teammate sadly today with Mezgec leaving the race in an ambulance. So let's catch up with them now. First, James Knox and then Nick Schultz.
That's stage 14 now. Bit of a strange day, to be honest. Rolling from somewhere near, I think you pronounce it Torre la Vieja. I think it's like Oscar Freire country in Cantabria, to Oviedo in Asturias. It looked like a straightforward day on some beautiful roads, lovely day. Had a little appreciation of the mob mentality of cycling this morning when all the sort of teams of the sprinters were lined up at the front during the neutral, just like commanding the show, just sort of looking around at which guys were going to let go. Just gone the complete opposite of the last few days where it's just every man's been trying to get in the break and it's impossible to control. Today was a bit of a different story, and 5 or 6 teams in fact were all amassed near the front ready to try and let away a move that they wanted. And yeah, in the end it wasn't a perfect move, but it wasn't too bad. Just 6 guys set about controlling it. I've got to be honest, felt awful today. Really felt awful. I thought I'd been on top of things, you know. Or maybe it was just a bit of an off day. Maybe it was one of those in-between days as well where head wasn't quite in it, wasn't quite as concentrated. I don't know, I just can't put my finger on it, but I just felt so bad. Just always uncomfortable, struggling to hold the wheel every time there was a little acceleration. And it just got worse and worse and worse. I didn't get right into it or anything. In the end, it turned out to be a pretty hard chase. A really, really hard chase. And even though we were amassed near the front, first team, saving a lot of energy being there through Gijon and then up the final climb, where it was a bit technical in the hitting Gijon before and then going over to the final climb, and then it got a bit swamped. But yeah, even though I was up there saving legs, just really, really struggling. A little bit worried, but hopefully it'll be all right tomorrow. Tried to stay with the lads as long as possible, and then thought I'd get out of trouble, get out of the way, but ended slap bang in that crash there at 1k to go. Big crash, really, really big crash. I must have been like 60th wheel or something, you know, not in the mess of, not trying to stay way clear of any of that. Still ended up right in the thick of it. Landed on a few bodies, came away very unscathed, very lucky. A few guys looking pretty bashed up. Luka Mezgec, I believe, is out of the race, so hope he's okay. And everyone else, yeah. Just a tricky one where basically coming in with a bit of speed into the final 1k kicker, and there's that sort of like squashing effect where the people from the front slow down as they hit the climb, and everyone from behind comes with speed and wants to keep the speed. And unfortunately in that situation, it's a really good opportunity for a couple of guys just to sort of tussle for a wheel, refusing to get on the brakes. In doing so, sort of taking each other out. But I think that's what will have happened. And then the aftermath was pretty nasty with, I think, about, you know, looked like a lot of guys on the floor. And yeah, I just rolled in after that. Other things to talk about today, we were along the route of the Santiago pilgrimage for a lot of it. Saw a lot of people hiking today. A few weary travellers and a few weary cyclists. Tried to ask a couple of people how much they knew. By the end of it, I figured out I seem to know more than anyone else about this. But yeah, it just seems to be it's a Catholic pilgrimage, isn't it? I've been to Santiago Compostela. Must have been like 12 years ago as a family on holiday. People just walk from everywhere, don't they? I think like the main one is to come from Lourdes in the Pyrenees or something. But yeah, crazy to see so many people like full beards, looking like haven't been showered for weeks, just hiking by the side of the road. And not just one or two, but we must have seen about 100, 200 along the route today. Before eventually we got off like the official route. So yeah, one notable thing for today. Also got to say how beautiful it was today. Whoa. Like I said, I've had family holidays in this region. We've taken twice when I was young. Once took the ferry from Plymouth to Santander, and then Portsmouth, Bilbao. We had all the bikes on the back of the car when, you know, I was only 12 or 13, a proper little family holiday, just pottering around, going to the beach, going for walks and stuff. I think one we were in Asturias, one we were in the Basque Country, and then we sort of made our way home in the car by France. So never raced here before, so the only memories I have from the region are from those holidays. But yeah, really, really beautiful today. So green, so pretty, so lush. Yeah, really liked it. It was the only thing that made the day a bit more tolerable. The game between the breakaway and the bunch is always kind of amusing. Maybe if you don't understand, like, it's not so clear from what's at home, but the breakaway, immediately 5-6 teams are working at the front. Everyone was pretty keen for a sprint finish, so the break out front knows that their chances are pretty limited. In a sort of reverse psychology, the harder they go, the less chance they have, because just behind, the bunch just rides harder and eventually they wear out. So it becomes, you know, full cat and mouse, as they say. They just decide to go slower. The bunch wants to give them the gap, so then they don't get too close, then other people don't start attacking. And then they pick their moment off a descent, maybe about 50-60k to go, and just completely change the pace, sort of tried to catch us everyone off guard, and the gap was back out to, like, I think it was more than 3 minutes. I can't remember exactly. And then it becomes a really difficult task to close it in the last 50k. With the breakaway committed to going full, and the bunch not being able to close much time behind. So yeah, that's a little insight into the art of the breakaway. Made for a tough chase. And a deserved winner in Sam Bennett. I've just seen the video of the finish, and wow, that was impressive, eh?
Stage 14, the second or third sprint stage of the race. Crazy, really, when you think about it. 2 weeks into a Grand Tour and only a few sprints. It's quite rare, but I guess that's what makes the Vuelta. The start today, again, it was one of those ones that could have gone either way. A big group going up the road and fighting for the stage win, or I guess an alliance of some sort amongst the teams with fast guys to try and control the beginning and bring things back together for a bunch sprint. We were among those teams that were interested in controlling the start to try and eliminate a really big group going up the road. So we were present and active in controlling groups to try and limit that group to as small as possible, really. So in the end, 6 guys went up the road, and Quick Step were really intent on keeping that gap very low, lower than normal, really, because there were some strong guys up there. So we were riding up there with them. Quick Step, ourselves, Trek, UAE. Yeah, I was one of those riders that was helping out in the first 60k or so. I did a pull, then Damo did one, followed by Scabu, just to sort of even out that workload a bit. And then for the last 60k or so, before the sort of key final point, I did most of the pulling on our behalf, just to save Scabu and Damo for tomorrow, as they're really key climbers for our 2 GC guys. It was quite a fast day back in the peloton, and on very sort of hard roads to control. It was really up and down, left, right, all day, and actually just probably one of those days where if you're riding at the front, it's not too much harder than being in the wheels, just because it's so strung out, that elastic band effect always happening at the back. So it wasn't so bad, and we really had to ramp things up there at the end, though, to pull back the breakaway, as they were obviously playing a bit of cat and mouse and saving themselves for the finale. And yeah, credit to them, they did a really strong ride, but they were caught towards the end. Unfortunately, there was a massive crash at a K to go. That brought down our sprinter, Luca, who is, he came down hard. But I'm not sure on the extent of his injuries at the moment. I think he's off getting some scans, but fingers crossed it comes back okay. But yeah, just some really bad luck, and sort of bad luck that keeps flowing for us, unfortunately. But the morale's still really high, and we're looking to turn that luck around and find some success. And we believe in our riders, our leaders, 110%, and we won't stop believing, and we go all the way to Madrid chasing some success or even just some better luck. The next 2 days are very key, very hard, probably 2 of the hardest days of the race coming up, and we've got 2 guys who can perform really, really well there. So we'll see what we can do.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you very much indeed to Science and Sport, supporters of the Cycling Podcast for a long time now. And you can get your 25% off with the code SISCP25 at scienceinsport.com. declercq.com. Now, Lionel, I thought it would be interesting to hear from one of the riders who we see on the front an awful lot, and actually doing a little bit more than that. Mentioned him a couple of times, but a couple of days ago, Tim Declercq was very important indeed in Philippe Gilbert's win. And in fact, Wilfried Peters in last night's podcast said that without Declercq, Gilbert wouldn't have won the stage. He's a guy, he's quite distinctive. He's a sort of tall, rangy figure, and he spends many kilometres on the front, a lot in the classics, but when he rides a Grand Tour, we see him on the front a lot, and that was again the case today, Tim Declercq. So I went to speak to him just to ask him about the job that he does, and you know, what the goals are that he sets himself, personal motivation, how he you know, really sacrifices himself so much for his team. Here's what he said. How do you measure improvement? How do you assess that you're better this spring than you were last spring?
You can see it in the power, but also in the way the races go. For sure, I also did a lot of pulling when I had to, but the difference was that sometimes this spring they asked me something else, to also jump in some breakaways when, you know, it was really hard after controlling the bunch already in the beginning. So that was nice to see that sometimes I can also do that. Not in the absolute final, of course. That's for the other big guys in the team, but I'm really happy with my role I have now, and I really like this team, and if we win so much, it's really nice.
So, I mean, it's interesting. You obviously go into the races with a team goal to win, but do you go into the races with a personal goal as well often? Yeah,
it's not that it's measured from I want to stay until that point, but during the races I set a goal for myself that, like, for example, Paris-Roubaix, after being in the break, I set we were 35 guys away, and I said now I just go as hard as possible just until Valers. And then I said the guys that have to chase behind, that some teams are going to have to blow themselves up. And then the line is there for me, and if I still have something left, I try to finish. But like in Roubaix, I was so dead, I quit right away because I couldn't do anything more for the team. So that's for sure always the biggest goal for me, to help the team as best as possible. And in these races, I don't have personal ambitions. Only, like I said, to do the work as long as possible, but no personal ambitions and like a result.
Do you enjoy your role?
Yeah, of course. I always said when I was with Sport Vlaanderen, I always said that I thought this role would suit me best. And then it's nice to see that during those 3 years I developed into one of the better ones, I think, in this kind of job. And that's nice to see that I was right. But also I know what I can and I know what I cannot do. So what I cannot do is ride the finals in these kind of races. So it's not, I don't really want to float away in my mind and say that I can ride finals in the big races. I think I don't have the explosivity needed for that, so I'm really happy with my role, and I hope to do this for quite a lot of years. In the biggest races, or if the big stars of the team they are at the start line, I know my place, I know my role, I know I have to pull for those guys and to work for those guys. But in some little bit smaller races, we don't have much of them during the year. But for example, like in Samain, I specifically asked, can I wait a bit longer in the final? Then I still did my work and my job, but it was nice for that one time to ride the final. And if I could take the win, it was going to be great. But it was already nice to ride the final for one day. But I will not have many chances in my cycling career to win a race. So that was one missed opportunity. But still, maybe. You don't know, maybe some in the future, some other possibility will come.
So that was Tim Declercq, one of the unsung heroes, I suppose, of many of Deceuninck-Quick Step's victories. Lionel, should we wrap things up? The sun is dropping behind the hills here, and I'm getting quite chilly.
What's on the menu tonight, Richard? Do you know?
Yeah, because the restaurant is closed, so I said, can you rustle me up something? So they're rustling me up something with chicken and chips and salad. I mean, the picture wasn't that appetizing that they showed me. I'm hoping in real life it's going to be better. Weirdly, there is actually a sauna here and a pool. I mean, I'm the only person staying here, and it's quite an elaborate kind of setup, really. Very run down in parts, and it's got this kind of brand new sauna and swimming pool, and the guy who owns the place very proudly showed me this and said, "It's good, isn't it?" I was like, "Yeah, but."
So that's your morning. That's your morning sorted tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to go there now before dinner. I've got an early start tomorrow, so I'm going to see the Vuelta director, Javier Guillen. So I'm going to go and see him first thing in the morning. Just a little reminder before we go, our latest Kilometre Zero, supported by Hansgrohe, came out yesterday, the Basque Country, and it's a bit about the kind of culture, food and cycling in that region that we came through a couple of days ago now.
I enjoyed that, Rich. I listened to that whilst running.
Great.
And it made me realise I'm kind of missing out on the most interesting bit of the course this year, although I do have high hopes for this final week, kind of not really round Madrid, is it, but to the left of Madrid, an area of Spain I really don't know anything about at all, so I'm looking forward to exploring that a little bit next week.
Great. I'm looking forward to having some company as well. I mean, I see a bit of Daniel, but we're not always in the same place, so although I think we are actually with him, so the three of us will be all together next week, which will be good, I'm sure. That'll be a good way to end the Vuelta, but there's still a week to go, and tomorrow's another sort of GC day with a big climb to the finish, so I'll be reporting from there tomorrow. I think I'll be joined by Daniel tomorrow night. His suspension runs out after this, immediately we've stopped recording this podcast, so
then I'm back on Monday because Daniel's going to eat olives all the way through tomorrow night's podcast.
Olives are okay. Olives are acceptable. But yeah, that's all for tonight, I think, Lionel. Just a quick reminder that if you fancy coming to see the Cycling Podcast live, we're doing an event at the Royal Hall in Harrogate during the World Championships with a special guest, Matt White, the DS at Mitchelton Scott, who is very entertaining at these things, so it should be well worth attending. And we've got our November tour all over UK and Ireland. Go to thecyclingpodcast.com, click on live events down the side, and buy your tickets like that. Now, before we go, Lionel, quick thank you to friends of the podcast.
Big thank you to James Scollay, Peter Cook, Richard Dodds, Dominic McEwen, Ian Elwes, I hope that's right, Catherine Foster and Chris Hall. Actually, a friend of the podcast called Rob Butchart came up to me today in Oviedo to tell me that I'd butchered his name in Butchart had his name in the podcast when we said thanks. So he's had 2 thanks now, in fact almost 3. Thanks also from me to Austin Dickon, Clinton Donkin, Gethin Rees, Ellis Meredith Gomer, is that Meredith, is that correct? It's Welsh. Paul Mitchell, John McDonald and Mark Himbury. Thank you very much to you all. And that's all from us. Thank you very much, Lionel. Thank you, Richard. Enjoy your chicken and chips, and I don't want to think too much about your visit to the sauna, to be honest, but try not to arrive at your meeting with Javier Guillen tomorrow all sort of prune-like and wrinkly. Hopefully you'll be back to normal by the morning.
I think so, yeah. Thank you, Lionel. Good night.
Good night, Rich.